Hello everybody and welcome to the Football Philosophy channel, and this is the rating the ratings show after United have had a great win in Turin. I thought it was going to be a tough game against Real Sociedad. They're doing okay in La Liga, but a 4-0 win in Turin. It was on a neutral ground in Turin, and the 4-0 win, surely obviously United are not going to, well, it's obvious United are not going to get beaten by 4-0 or more at Old Trafford in the second leg. So that's United through to the last 16 of the Europa League. So it was a good performance. I'm going to do a rating show with a difference. I haven't had a chance yet to re-watch the game. I'm doing this on Thursday morning. It's a pre-recorded show, obviously. I'm doing this on the Thursday morning. I've not had a chance, and I've got a slightly busy day ahead of me. Sorry, it's not Thursday morning. The game was a Thursday night. I'm doing this on Friday morning. United are on to Newcastle on Saturday. I am going to do a player in focus, but a lot of people are talking about Dan James's performance, so rather than put it up for voting, I'm going to do the player in focus tomorrow, Saturday, and the player in focus will be Dan James. Getting back to the ratings, I haven't had a chance yet to re-watch it. I will re-watch it, and what I'm going to do tomorrow when I do the player in focus show is I will rate my own ratings. I always say to people, look, you can't give ratings. I know everybody does it, but giving ratings out when you've just watched a game is really, really difficult to get it right. You need to watch the game if you want to get an accurate assessment of a player's game. Really, you need to watch that player for the whole match, let alone 11 players. So it's difficult, and you're also frustrated with some players and pleased with other players. This accounts for everybody, even myself. You've probably got some sort of bias. Somebody said to me on Twitter the other day, you've got an agenda. I noticed somebody else in the same argument said he hasn't got an agenda, he treats everybody fairly, which I do agree with, but I try to treat everybody fairly. And this person, very intelligent argument, I thought, he said he has got an agenda because he's already said who the better players are, and then he tries to defend those players. So when you say agenda, I've got no agenda for any ulterior motive, but I do get the guy's point. And you might be more defensive of the players just because you've said that player is a good player and you want to be proved right. So I think it's a fair argument and well put. But I do try to be as fair as I possibly can, and I have got no ulterior motive whatsoever for any agendas. I don't prefer players that come from Manchester or come from England. I don't prefer players that have come through the youth ranks. I don't prefer players that have cost 50, 60, 70 million pounds. I don't prefer players for any other given reason than I think they are good players who play the game well, look after the ball well, and make good decisions on the football field. Those are the players that I like, and those are the players that I favour. And maybe it is possible that this guy's got a point, that once I've said these players are good players, maybe it is an agenda to prove that they are right, that I am right. But let's be honest, I think I am right. I think that, when I say a player's a good player, usually it's because of what I've seen on the, well, not usually, it's because of always because of what I've seen on the football pitch, and there are no ulterior motives whatsoever. So I've got the ratings in front of me from the Manchester Evening News. As I say, I haven't rewatched the game, so as a one-off, I'm going to rate these ratings just from what I've seen from one viewing of the game, the live viewing, just like everybody else does. So then tomorrow, I'm not going to make a song and dance over it, but I will skip through when I'm doing the player in focus tomorrow, and also a quick look ahead at the Newcastle game tomorrow. I will skip through my ratings from this game that I'm doing now, and then tomorrow, having re-watched it again, I'm going to rate my own. I won't make a big deal of it, but I will rate my own ratings tomorrow when I do the player in focus. Just quickly before I go to these ratings, then in the Manchester Evening News, I just want to mention something that I put on Twitter. I put a clip up on Rick the Red UK on Twitter where I'm actually speaking over the clip. Quite a lot of people have looked at it, and it's a clip of Fred taking a throw-in against West Brom. And quite a lot of people get it, but there's quite a lot of people on there who don't see what I'm talking about. And I feel as though I need to try and make the point. I don't know. I'm sure quite a few people will watch this show who've actually who've actually seen that thread, that clip. It's not a thread, it's one clip on Twitter. So there's a clip of Fred taking a throw-in. It's about a minute long, maybe just over a minute long. And if you have a look at it on Twitter, you'll be able to see what I mean. Some people saying that I'm going over the top. I promise you I am not going over the top. Proper well-organised teams do not have central midfield players taking throw-ins. Central defenders don't take throw-ins. Centre forwards tend to not take throw-ins. It's not as uncommon because sometimes he's the only man up there when the ball goes out. But central defenders and central midfield players do not take throw-ins. And the reason they don't take throw-ins is that once they've taken a throw-in, they're immediately out of position. If a fullback or a winger takes a throw-in, he only has to step foot on the pitch and he's virtually in the correct position on the field that he wants to be in. If you imagine this, when you take a throw-in, you can't throw the ball 50, 60, 70 yards. When you take a throw-in, the ball is already in that vicinity of the pitch. So if you're a fullback and you take a throw-in, you want to be in that area where that ball still is. So you're already in position. If you're a centre-back, you've got to go back into your centre-back position. If you're a central midfield player, you've got to go in field at least 20 yards, maybe more. So you do not have central players taking throw-ins. And probably even more so, you don't have central midfield players taking throw-ins that are up the field. If the opposition break on you, you're out of position. And even, I'll add another bit to that, this particular throw-in, it was a throw-in where their keeper had put the ball out of play. Their keeper's put the ball out of play because one of their players needs to have treatment. And the ball was dead for about a minute. I've got a couple of things to say about this. The ball was dead for about a minute. So during that minute, and it only takes 5 seconds, by the way, if you jog, maybe 10 if you walk, 15 at the most. The ball's dead for a minute. What the players do is you get into position, and the person who's taking the throw-in takes the throw-in. So this throw-in is going to go back either to their keeper. He actually threw it to a defender who passed it to the keeper. But it's either going to go back to the keeper or back to a defender because they've kicked it out. And the person who should take it is our wide left player, or at a push, at the most, our main striker. If the main striker takes it, at least you've got 10 players behind the ball as soon as he gives the ball back to the opposition. The left winger could take it, which would be Anthony Marshall on this occasion. He could take it, and he's quickly back in position. He hasn't got far to go. He's got to come 5 or 10 yards infield and maybe diagonally 5 yards back. He's not far out of position. He's not really out of position. By the time he gets the ball to the keeper, he's in position. So he's got no distance to cover. So just before I carry on, I'm sure lots of you, maybe some youngsters won't have heard it, but plenty of people will have heard the old saying, if you take care of the pennies, the pounds will take care of themselves. That applies to football. Take care of the little things, and the big things might not quite take care of themselves, but there'll be less big things and less difficult moments to deal with if you get the little things right. So on the face of it, to a lot of people, and I've seen some people on Twitter saying, oh, you're going over the top. I promise you, I am not going over the top. If you showed that clip to Pep Guardiola, he'd be scratching his head. You know, it's the same as their City having a throw-in where they're going to throw it back to their keeper and it's near the edge of the box. It's the same as Rodri or Fernandinho running up the field, taking that throw-in to their keeper and then running back into position while the forwards are already up there. What's the point? What is the point? If you showed it him, if he was lucky enough to have a private 10 minutes with Pep Guardiola and he showed him that, I think he'd laugh. Maybe if he was in public, maybe he wouldn't laugh, but he would be scratching his head and saying, why is a central midfield player taking a throw-in? So just to take that a step further, I'm trying to picture what actually happened in the minute while the ball was dead, because the lad was down having treatment for a minute. That's a long time, a hell of a long time. 5 seconds, a lot can happen in 5 seconds in a game of football or on a football pitch. A minute is a ridiculously long, you in a minute, Fred's got time to run up to our goalpost and shake hands with the keeper and run all the way back and take the throw in. You can do so much, you can do anything anything you want on a football pitch in a minute, and the ball's dead for almost a minute while this lad is having treatment. What you don't get the benefit of is the camera showing you the pitch during that minute. You don't get the benefit of that. Obviously, they zoom in on the lad who's having treatment. Maybe they show a replay of a goal that's already happened, or maybe of the lad getting fouled, if he got fouled when he got injured, or what they think caused his injury. They show you a replay or two, and they zoom in on the lad who's having treatment. So the moment the camera actually pans on to Fred taking the throw-in, it's literally 2 or 3 seconds before he takes the throw-in. But you've not seen what's happened in the previous minute. Now, even though I can't see where the other players are, and there's a point to this, I'll come to the point. Even though I can't see, and obviously anybody who's watching will know this as well and can agree with this, I could tell you where the players are on the field, even though I can't see them, right? In the picture, you can still see Bruno, he's up the field a bit, maybe a bit too far. Rashford's up the field, Anthony Martial's up the field. You can see Fred who's taking the throw-in. Anthony Martial standing there waiting for Fred to take the throw-in. He's 10 yards away from him. Anthony Martial could... Where Anthony Martial is standing, by the way, is where he thinks he's best to be, because he's in a position where he knows Fred's going to throw it to the keeper, so then the keeper might throw it to the right back. So he's standing in a position where he's ready to threaten the right back, so the keeper might not throw it to him, or if he does throw it to him, he's got a chance of trying to get it off him or force him wide, or whatever he decides to do. So Anthony Martial is standing in the position where he's best to be stood while that throw is being taken, although he should actually be taking the throw-in. So the players that I can't see in the picture, this is the important bit, I can tell you where those players will be. Because the ball's on the left wing, Wan-Bissaka will be about 25 yards in from the right touchline. There's a point behind this. He'll be 25 yards in from the right touchline, he'll be about 5 yards inside his own half, because he's edging over that side of the field, because that's where the ball is. They're not going to switch it instantly. You've got time to move across then as the ball gets switched. So Lindelof's playing right-sided centre-back. Lindelof will be roughly in line with Wan-Bissaka. Again, probably 5 yards inside his own half, and he will be bang on the centre spot. Give or take a couple of yards, bang on the centre line, centre spot, looking up the pitch, because the ball's to the left. And then Maguire, who's playing left centre-back, he'll be in line with Lindelof. He'll be 10 to 15 yards to the left. And then Luke Shaw, probably another 10 to 15 yards left of Maguire, 10 yards in from the touchline. So the back four have shifted across to the left. They're all in line. They're all about 5 yards inside United's half. They're ready and waiting in position, which no matter where they were on the pitch, they could never mind walk into position. They had time to crawl on all fours into position while the ball was dead. So they will be in position waiting for what happens next. Now here's the important one. Scott McTominay also isn't in the picture. Scott McTominay will be in the centre circle. He will probably be just in front of the halfway line and probably 4 or 5 yards in front of the halfway line, bang in the centre, or maybe slightly left, 3 or 4 yards left, just because the ball's to the left. Now then, next to him, 5, 8 or 10 yards to his left should be Fred. He's playing left side centre midfield. Scott McTominay's playing centre midfield right, and Fred's playing left. So Fred should be 8 or 10 yards left of Scott McTominay. But he's not. He's taking the throw-in. So those 5 players, and obviously plus the keeper will be on the edge of his box. So those 5 players, the back 4, Scott McTominay and the keeper, 6 players out of the team are not in the picture, but I can tell you where they will be stood, because that's where they should be. So Fred should be where he should be. Scott McTominay at this moment is patrolling that central area of the field on his own, because Fred's taking a throw-in up the field. This would not happen with a properly organised team. It wouldn't happen with Liverpool. It wouldn't happen with City. One of the forwards will be taking the throw-in. The people on Twitter who have said I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, they're not taking the football as seriously as I take it, or, I mean, they don't need to do this, of course, they're not taking it as seriously as Pep Guardiola takes it, or Jurgen Klopp. But I don't have to look at the top managers. Teams in the second and whatever you call it these days, the bottom 2 divisions, teams in the National League, Teams in the National League won't get this wrong. It's such a natural, normal part of the game. The ball goes out dead, you get in position. Your central midfield player's position is in that centre circle or just outside that centre circle. And one of your forwards gives the ball to the keeper. When one of your forwards gives the ball to your keeper, he can kick it up there and you're there. You're there ready and waiting. So I can't stress to you. Some people actually said to me it's a bit irrelevant, nothing happened. No, nothing did happen, but on another day something might happen. So you take care of the pennies and the pounds will take care of themselves. You do the simple things right, and this couldn't be more simple. It could not be more simple. And I don't want to bang on about it, but I'll tell you what does happen. The keeper kicks it. It goes to the keeper from Fred, and then Fred's got to run back. He's got to run back 30, 35 yards into position. If Anthony Marshall would have took the throw in, he's got to run 7 or 8 yards, 10 at the most, to be in position. So Fred's got to run 35 yards back into position, and the goalkeeper kicks the ball out. Think about this. Before Fred is in position, he's still running back when the keeper has kicked the ball. And the keeper didn't rush, by the way. The defender didn't rush to give it to the keeper, and the keeper didn't rush to kick it. So they could have done this quicker. So the ball gets kicked, and Freddie's still getting back into position when the ball is kicked. His job in that middle of midfield, the same as Scott McTominay's, I don't know the exact figures, but when that keeper kicks that ball, probably once in 10, doesn't matter how many times, because it's not once in 1,000 or once in 100. It might be once in 15, but it might be once in 8. But let's just call it once in 10. 1 in 10, the keeper won't make a good connection, and it doesn't go quite as far as he expects it to go, and it doesn't go as high. That's the important bit. It doesn't go as high as he expects it to. Maybe 1 in 10, maybe once in a dozen. So the two central midfield players need to be there, ready and waiting for that to happen. They're there to compete for that ball that's not got the right length on it or the right height on it to go into our half of the field. That's the first job. Now, it's okay to say, well, that didn't happen. I know it didn't happen, but on another day, it might happen. It's because he's done it once. He's took his throw in once. The same thing might happen next week and the week after that. So one day that ball will come through the area of the field where he should be at a level that he could be challenging for it. Right. On this occasion, this doesn't happen. What does happen, it goes further. And the centre-back's job, if they've not got time to bring it down, or they're not quite, if it's challenging someone, they've not got time maybe to nod it to the left back, which they do sometimes, or the right back, depending what area of the pitch they're on. What regularly happens, probably 50% of the time, is the centre-back just heads it back the way it's come from, and he heads it back as far as he can. And that ball sometimes drops in that centre circle where you should be. So you're there, you're watching the keeper kick it. If it's low, you're there ready to challenge for it. Usually it's too high, or not always, but usually it's too high. It goes over you. So as a central midfield player, you watch it go back, you watch your centre-back challenge for it, and they call it the second ball. The centre-back heads it, and you're there ready to compete for the second ball. All these are a dead normal part of the game, and they're dead important. And Fred is only just arriving. Now, don't forget, it could have gone low, but it didn't go low. He's just arriving on the scene as it gets headed, and it does come, and the second ball, Scott McTominay competes for it. He gets beaten, really, but their lad just kicks it. I think it goes all the way up to De Gea. So there's no harm done. There's no harm done. But if you did it every time, there would be harm done at some stage during the season. It would cost you a goal. I just wanted to add one other thing about it. Just one thing that it just bemuses me. I'd like to know the conversation. Don't forget, the ball's been out of play for a minute. You've not got the benefit of the camera angle. I'm pretty confident Fred's not just decided in the last 5 seconds, I'm going to take that throw in. I don't think he's just run out of position in the last 5 seconds and gone, I'm going to take that throw in. He must have been there already 30 seconds perhaps, standing there waiting to take the throw in. He wasn't on the left wing when the keeper kicked it out. So he has come to that position from somewhere. What's gone through his mind to make him think, I'm going to take that throw in? And then more things than that. Why hasn't Scott McTominay gone? Where's my partner? Why hasn't he said to Fred, what are you doing? Come back here next to me. Why hasn't the captain, Harry Maguire? You should be looking. I'm picturing Yap Stam and Keenan Scholes in front of him and one of them's missing. He'd be going, Keano, what are you doing taking that throw in? Get back here. Let Giggsy take that. You get back here. It's important. It's really, really important. And we've got it wrong. And this is Manchester United Football Club. And what tiny, the last little bit. Anthony Martial standing there, you know, just letting him take. There must have been some conversation. He's probably been stood there for 30 seconds. The players talk to each other. As Anthony Martial said to Fred, "Do you want me to take that? Should I not take that?" And as Fred gone, "No, I'll take this." I'm just bemused by it all. I don't get it, and it's bang out of order. It's ridiculous, and there's people on Twitter questioning me why I'm mentioning that we've got a central midfield player taking a throw-in up near their box that he's going to give back to them, and then he's got to run all the way back into position while they're kicking it up the field. It isn't much different to Harry Maguire going up there taking the throw-in, or Victor Lindelof going up there taking the throw-in. It's an absolute joke. So I've got that off my chest. And I'll skip through these ratings quickly now. Got the Manchester Evening News ratings in front of me. This is from the 4-0 win in Turin against Real Sociedad. Dean Henderson in goal made an impact. Like I say, I'll skip through them dead quick because I've not watched the game again yet. As I said at the start of the show, I'm just going to skip through them, tell you what I think dead quickly, and then I'll have a look at the game today, and then tomorrow I will do a player in focus, and I'll skip through my own ratings tomorrow. So from one viewing, Dean Henderson made an important save during the frenzied start and was dependable in dealing with crosses. Another clean sheet, 7 out of 10. I would agree with a 7 out of 10, which is good. I always say I like to give a keeper 7 if he keeps a clean sheet anyway. So 7 out of 10, fair enough, played well. Wan-Bissaka booked early on and made some risky challenges, but defended solidly and stayed on for the full duration. That's worth mentioning when you've got 5 subs, I suppose. And they've given him a 7, played well. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Eric Bailey had an erratic start that let Adnan Januzaj in, but regained composure, much more settled when United went 2-0 up. The ball that he let go, whenever we're discussing which centre-back should play, everybody picks on Victor Lindelof for using an header, losing an header, not being quick enough. These could have scored in the first 5 minutes. They didn't go on and score, but that's just look at the look that we had on the day. But Eric sort of let the ball go under his foot or let it run by him, and so you can concede goals for different reasons. And Eric's not as good at some things that Victor's good at, and vice versa. But they've given him a 6, and a 6 is decent to above average. I would say go on. I'll agree with that. A 6, yeah. Harry Maguire did not look comfortable against Sociedad's pace, but executed a key clearance early in the second half. That was a great block. I remember the one that was coming across the face of the goal when it was 1-0. They've given him a 6, which is decent. I would say he had a decent game. I had no reason to disagree with that. I don't agree with the next one. Alex Telles dealt well with Januzaj and was proactive in the attacking third as well. One of his best performances for United. They've given him an 8. Well, I won't reduce that by too many. I'll reduce it by 1. I think that's the first one I've reduced. I'll give him a 7. Dealt well with Januzaj. That might well be the case, but as soon as I'd seen Januzaj play for United about 3 times, he was flavour of the month for months. But straight away, I thought not quite good enough lad for United, not quite strong enough. And watching him play last night, he's just an half decent player. That's all he is. So to say the writers putting dealt well with Januzaj because Januzaj's an ex-United player. It's not like he's gone and signed for Sevilla or Real Madrid in Spain or Barcelona. He's playing for the team that are probably punching above the weight and 5th in the Liga. And to me, he just looks an half decent player. There's no point mentioning that you've dealt well with him. He's just an half decent player and nothing more. And I would give Alex Telles a 7 rather than an 8. Scott McTominay reiterated his importance with a box-to-box performance. A doubt going into the game, came off early in the second half. They've given him a 7. I'll agree with that. I think that's 3 7s and 2 6s so far. Fred provided balance next to McTominay. At least he didn't run up the pitch and take a throw in, I suppose. And behind Bruno Fernandez in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's favoured midfield trio, and his assist for Marcus was quality. That's all true, and I will agree with the 7 that they've given him. Mason Greenwood performed selflessly and mucked in defence when he should have occupied a more central role. Unfortunate to be flagged offside when he seemed to have assisted James for a goal. Fair shout, all that as well. They've given him a 6. 6. Would they go? I mean, 5. Did he play decent to above average, or did he play average? 5 would be average. I'll go with the 6. I'll agree with that. They're giving him a 6. Bruno Fernandez, they've given him an 8. Where would United be without him? They've said. I don't agree with that, as everybody knows. They seem to think that we'd only play with 10 men if we didn't have him, and I do believe we could play. We could play better more often by keeping the ball better. That's my opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion. And he does. When players scoring goals, though, you can't knock it. They've put on here Fernandez notched his 20th goal of the season, which is fantastic, by the way, with the expertise of a striker, and then got another. They've given him an 8 out of 10. I do think although I've just generalised, I always say I don't like people generalising in these ratings. I have just generalised about Bruno. My initial feeling, like I say, I'll watch it and I'll watch Bruno carefully when I watch it back. But I did feel as though he did play better. He did look after the ball better and didn't make too many silly decisions in the game. And they've given him an 8. He's the only one who gets an 8, and I would agree with that. I would give him an 8. So I think Bruno played well. Anybody who saw me fan cam, I gave Dan James man of the match. It was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Look, as much as I take this seriously, it's also an entertainment. It's also a bit of fun. It would be a bit churlish not to give Bruno man of the match, really, when he scored twice. I know I always say it doesn't matter who scores. That's something to think of going forward and going into a game. So long as you score, it really doesn't matter who scores. Once a game has happened, and looking back in history at games, of course it matters. It matters in as much as, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi are regarded as two of the greatest players in the world, mainly, in the history of football, mainly because of the amount of goals that they've scored. So of course it matters, or it can matter. So Bruno did get 2 goals in this game, and I do think he looks after the ball well, and I do think he played well as getting 2 goals. The 2 goals are the icing on the cake. So I would agree with the 8 for Bruno on this. Dan James, they've only given a 6 to. The only dubious inclusion, and it showed. I'm amazed. Nigh anonymous and ran around like a headless chicken. I can't believe it. Improved in the second half, kept going and got a goal. Well, I thought Dan James played well. They've not mentioned, they've actually mentioned that Mason got caught off. Yeah, this is a belter, this. They've actually mentioned that Mason would have had an assist when he passed it to Dan James, but it was Mason that was offside. And Dan James took that chance. Okay, it's not Dan James was onside. It wasn't his fault that the goal was disallowed. Mason was offside. The ball was squared to Dan, and Dan put it in the net off the post. Fair enough, but you're supposed to aim for the corner. You probably heard the commentator when Rashford had a similar chance saying, "Why didn't he aim for the corner? He hits it straight at the keeper." And Rashford missed 2 chances which were equally as good, equally as easy as the one that James took. But he took his chance. It's not his fault that Greenwood was flagged offside, but they're actually mentioning that Greenwood had that goal, had that assist disallowed, if you like, because the goal was disallowed by his own fault by being offside. Not his fault. I'm just looking at what they're saying. So it's not his. It's sort of his fault. He should time your run better, but it was tight. It was very close, but he was flagged offside. So it was because Mason was offside that the goal was disallowed. It wasn't because Dan James was offside that the goal was disallowed. But they're not mentioning the fact that Dan James put one of those chances on a plate for Marcus Rashford that he shot at the keeper when he should have buried it. So Dan James was unlucky to have a goal, have an assist chalked off, if you like. Is it really chalked off? He's not had the assist because he didn't put the ball in the net. But in a nutshell, he wasn't offside. He actually set up a sitter for Marcus, and Marcus didn't score it, and that's not Dan James's fault. So he should have had that assist. He did get another assist. He did score a goal, and they've said, and don't get me wrong, by the way, I'm not just saying those 3 things. I thought he played pretty well, Dan James, throughout. They've put a dubious inclusion, and it showed him. They've given him a 6. I gave him man of the match on the fan cam. It was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Bruno has got to be given man of the match. I think from one viewing, I'll have another look. Like I say, I would give Bruno an 8, but I would give Dan James a 7. They've given him a 6. Marcus Rashford was the wrong man in the right places in the first half. Wasted 3 excellent chances. I remember 2 of them, but I'll have to watch again, like I say. But his goal in the second half but he got a goal in the second half and had key roles in Fernandez's goals, which is all fair enough. And yet they're still only giving him a 6, maybe because of his missed chances. That's the Manchester Evening News ratings. I suppose he did miss some sitters. Look, if you're gonna say, like for example, Bruno got an 8, and part of that reason is because he scored 2 goals. You know, maybe I'd have only given him a 7. He played well enough. He looked after the ball well enough. I thought he did from one viewing, and maybe I would have given him a 7. But the 2 goals have boosted him to an 8. Maybe it's fair to say that Marcus played well enough and would have got a 7, but he's missed 2 chances. So maybe you knock a point. Well, they're saying 3 chances. He's missed 2 gilt-edged chances, as I can remember. So maybe it is fair to knock a point off for that. If it's fair to give somebody an extra point for scoring 2 goals, if you're missing sitters, maybe you should lose a point. So they've given him a 6. I'm not going to disagree with it. So there you go. I've given Marcus a 6, and I've given Dan James a 7, and Bruno an 8. Like I say, I'm going to give Dan James the player in focus, which will be interesting. The idea of the player in focus is obviously to justify. I've had a few people saying to me on Twitter, why don't you put the bad bits up? Well, I do try to include 1 or 2 things that they could have done better, but it's just obvious. If I'm trying to show how well a player played, you want to show as many good bits as you can. Is that not obvious? And then if you want to try and show that a player played, but I'd only do this if a player's played ridiculously poorly and made 10, 15, 16 mistakes, then you've got to show those mistakes. Because even if you've done 6, 7, 8 brilliant things, if you've done 16 mistakes in a game, it's too many. It's far too many. But if you've done the right thing most of the time, you don't have to do anything brilliant. It's perfectly fine to go through a game making lots of good decisions and making lots of good simple passes. They don't have to be backwards or sideways. Some of them will be forward, but so long as your team keep the ball like City play, if you like. If you've not got a forward pass on, you go sideways. If you've not got a sideways one on, you go backwards. Just keep the ball and keep it moving round, drag the opposition around. So long as you do the right thing and take the right decisions all the time through a game and don't make many mistakes, I believe you've had a decent game or a good game, and there's no point in showing any. You know, if you've made 1 or 2 mistakes, is there any point really in showing them? Let's just show the good bits and say, there you go, well, I've had a fine game. So I'll be doing a player in focus, Dan James. So bear that in mind. I've given him a 7, which means he had a good game. That's all it means. He played well. He had a good game. That's all it means. So I will be trying to show that Dan James had a good game when I look at it. And if I'm wrong, by the way, and he's made loads of mistakes, then I'll change my mark and I'll show more mistakes rather than more good things. But we'll soon see when I look at it again. I can't look at it again till tonight. This is Friday morning, this show. So I'll look at it again tonight, the game, and I will do the player in focus on Saturday, along with a quick preview of the Newcastle match. So that's that for now. I hope you've enjoyed that show. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe. Please tell all your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, don't tell anybody. Keep stum.